What they distinguish them is following the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So his tradition, the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as we said before, his saying, his actions, and things that he approved that happened around him in his time. So these are the two main ones. There's a third one that a lot of people don't pay attention to it. Understanding the two sources of knowledge, Quran and Sunnah, through the understanding of the generation that were contemporary to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Sahaba, their students, Tabi'een, and their next students, Tabi'een. The first three generations that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has praised, and he said, the best among you are my contemporary, then those who follow them and those who follow them. So these are the three principles of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah that distinguish them from everybody else. You will find some people who say, oh, in my dream, I've seen this, and then start a sect, start something because he's seen a dream. Either Allah told him that directly, who saw Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam teach him to do something different from everybody else. Then you know right away, this is false, this is wrong. If this was good, Rasulullah would have told us directly. Why should you come in a dream after 300, 500, 1,000 years, come to somebody and say, okay, I'm going to teach you something. The Sahaba didn't know, their students didn't know, nobody knew for 100 years, and here, take it, you have something precious. We know this is fabrication. Or somebody comes with certain ideology, they start mixing Islamic teaching with teaching from other methodology. I remember raising up in my country where they're trying to advance communist and socialist ideology. They're trying to convince us that Islam and communism and socialism are the same. It's about doing good to the community, not having any worldly possession. There's no rich, no poor. Everybody owns everything. Everybody does whatever they want to help one another. Sounds good in practice, in general, in theory. In practice, it means the government ruled everything. You have nothing in life. They made your life hell. That's how the things were running in Soviet Union, in Cuba, and a lot of these communist countries. So people trying to bring ideas that have nothing to do with Islam and trying to establish this is wrong. So inshallah, today we're going to be reading about some of the texts telling us why we should follow these principles. Quran, the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallam, and the understanding of the Sahaba and the early generation, as-Salaf as-Salih. When it comes to Quran, it's easy. I mean, there's a lot of text about how this Quran is the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's meant for guidance for mankind. Anybody that turns away from the Quran is leading astray, and he's going to be following false ideology. They're going to be following shaitan. They're going to be following their own ideas. الطريق الواضح هو ما جاء به محمد بن عبد الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عن ربه تاما كاملا لا يقبل الله دينا سواه قوله تعالى اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا. So anybody that wants to follow other than the clear, detailed path of Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم would not be accepted by Allah. In Surah Al-Ma'idah, the ayah that confirms that day, the day when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his Hajjat al-Wada', when he's making Hajj pilgrimage, and he was giving speech to the largest group of Muslims gathered at that time, over 100,000, some say 120,000 people were there, and that's a large gathering for that time. And that ayah was revealed. Today, I have completed your religion. I have fulfilled my bounty on you and have accepted Islam as a religion for you. So that means religion is perfect. If you have something perfect, you add to it, you make it less perfect. You take away from it, you're going to make it less than perfect. It's perfect. So the way Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught the religion, the way the Sahaba saw it, practiced, conveyed it, this is the perfect way. Any deviation from that is making it less than perfect. وَقَالَ وقوله تعالى فلا وربك لا يؤمنون حتى يحكموك فيما شجر بينهم ثم لا يجدوا في أنفسهم حرجا مما قضيت ويسلموا تسليما. So in this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears that by Lord, they will not be believers until they make you a judge for anything that they disagree on. And then inside their hearts, they have no question about it, and they will fully submit to it. So not only doing it because they have to, internally accepting it, knowing that this is the best judgment. So how would you know the judgment of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Through his sunnah, through his tradition that has been preserved with the likes of Imam al-Bukhari, Imam Muslim, al-Tirmidhi, and so on. The ulama of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, Ahlul Hadith, they preserved that sunnah. They made sure that the wordings that we have are truly wordings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The other day I was seeing a documentary about the Bible, the Gospels that they put in the Bible. And this is the Gospel of Luke, this is John, this is Matthew, and so on. You say, where does it say in the Gospel that the author of this Gospel is the person that they said on it? It said for hundreds of years they had Gospel that has no names on it. And somebody who decided to bring them one together said, who could have written that one? Oh, they chose one of the disciples to put a name to it. There's no proof at all that even the name on that gospel belonged to that person. The problem is they don't know the author, they don't know the student of that author, or the one who narrated from it until they got to the Greek translation, which everybody knows that the Bible was not revealed in Greek. The Old Testament was in Hebrew, the New Testament was in Aramaic. That was the language of Isa, of Jesus, alayhi salam. And then it was translated into Greek at some point, 100, 200 years later. And that's the basic of what people are using to translate any Bible without knowing the author. How can you do that? If I give you a law, I tell you, oh, by law, you're not allowed to buy more than 5 pounds of cheese a month. You say, who said that? Oh, it's in the law of the state. Show me that. You look at it, well, you got a book that says the law of the state. You go back and find the records. When was it accepted? Who are people voted for it? Was it accepted by the government? Was it vetoed? And so on. So, okay, there's a weird law that we shouldn't eat more than 5 pounds of cheese. There isn't such a law. But if somebody claimed it, print it, and put it in a paper, how can you prove it? You go back to the source. Now the same thing, you have a whole methodology that you don't know who wrote it. You know it's based on the truth, because Moses received the truth from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Isa, Jesus, he received the truth from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But where is it? It got mixed with people's wordings. It got distributed in a different way. So it's got deviated intentionally through addition, omission, and translation. So a word being a worshipper of Allah, a follower of Allah. Somebody translated it into son of Allah. So ibadullah, or we have in words say iyalullah. Al-khalqu kulluhum iyalullah. All creatures are dependent on Allah. So somebody decide the iyal, dependent, means children. And then see children, that means his father, and everybody physically is a child. And then you build a whole theology system based on words that people just mistranslated. So Quran is preserved the way it was revealed by the most trusted angel, Jibreel, to the most trusted human being, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to the most trusted people, the Sahaba, that memorized it by heart. It was compiled at the time of Rasulullah sallam, was written down, then compiled in one book. At that time was his first successor. When everybody that listened to it, memorized it, they still had their hard copies there, it was compiled. Different from people coming hundreds of years later and compiling a book and say, oh, this is the New Testament and this is the Old Testament. And they don't know who wrote it. So, and it's preserved till nowadays. Every time they find an old ancient copy of Quran and they try to compare it to the modern Quran, they don't find any changing at all. It's the same exact word. إِنَّا نَحْنُ نَزَّلْنَا الذِّكْرَ وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. Allah has said, we are the one who has sent this remembrance, the Quran, and we will preserve it. Preserving the wording of it, the pronunciation of it, the meaning of it, the practice of it, till the end of time. So when Isa, Jesus, will come back again, he will rule by Quran. He will rule by the Sunnah. There's no new religion. This is the final one. This is the final text that we preserve till the end of time. So this is the first source of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, Quran. فمن منهج أهل السنة في تقرير العقيدة التمسك بالكتاب والسنة وعدم التفريق بينهما وتحكيمهما والعمل بهما في كل ما يعرض لهم من قضايا العبادة وغيرها دون رد أو تأويل سواء كانت متواترة أو آحادة لا فرق فيها بعد صحتها وثبوتها إذ التفريق بينهما إنما هو من سمات أهل البدع. So the first characteristic of people Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, they hold tight to the text that was revealed, Quran and Sunnah. And Sunnah doesn't matter, one person narrated it or they have 100 or 1,000 person narrating it. As long as it's authentic by a trustworthy person, you hold tight to it. Why we say that? Because you have Ahlul Buddha, they want to limit the text so they'll be free to interject their own idea. They say, okay, Quran, we can't say anything about it. Sunnah, if it's one person, I will not accept it. I want hundreds of people to be narrating it. So this way, you limit 90% or more of the Sunnah, and then you can interject your own idea. So, like the people who, when you ask them, Ayn Allah? If you ask any people, Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, you say, where is Allah? Tell you, Ar-Rahman ala al-Arsh istawa. Allah himself described himself, the most merciful, settled over the throne. End of story. They don't ask how, they with description, how big it is, lean, settled. That's it. Ahlul Buddha, so the people will say, well, we think that we shouldn't assign a place or a direction for Allah because place and direction are created by Allah. And once you assign a place or direction for Him, you're limiting the Creator and what is created. So that means you have to reject the text and say it means something else. It means He created it or has power over it. I mean, come on. Who says that? Why this going around? Why want to do that? You put certain interjections, you have a certain idea in your mind, and you want to reject the text because you want to fit your own ideas. Ahlul Sunnah, in these specific Ahlul Bid'ah, they all agree that Allah doesn't resemble any of His creatures. He's not bound by anything that He's created. He's beyond any boundary. But if Allah Himself described Himself, He seated over the throne, we said He seated over the throne, not because we know, because He told us. How? We don't know. Allah is beyond description. He doesn't resemble anything that we physically know. So you cannot put a physical description to something you don't know. So if Allah said He settled over the throne, Ar-Rahmanu al-Arsh istawa, we say Ar-Rahman al-Arsh istawa. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked the little maid, where is Allah? She pointed up. He told her owner, she's a Muslim, free her. So this is the long story, Muawiyah ibn al-Hakam. Muawiyah ibn al-Hakam, he was a rich person, but a little bit fast to be angry. So one time he comes to the Salah, and it looks like he's been a while to come and pray in congregation. He used in Salah initially that people sometimes they will talk to one another in the prayer. But then the order came, you keep silent during the prayer, you don't say anything other than the prayer and the dhikr and so on. So when while he's a prayer, one of the Sahaba sneezed. So he turned to him and said, Arhamkumullah. And the guy just looked at him. He said, Wayhaka. And then they start looking at him. Wa thukla ummayah. Ma lakum tanzuruna ilay. He said, may my mother lose me, become an orphan. Why are you looking like this at me? So they started like hitting their thighs. He said, no, they want him to shut up. So he kept silent. He said, what's wrong with these people? So after the salah was done, Rasulullah sallam turned to him. He said, this salah is meant for remembrance of Allah. This general talk that people have daily life is not meant for salah. That's all he told him. So he was impressed. He said, another person, he will start yelling at me. He will start demeaning me. He was a very good educator. He said, okay, this is the chance. Let me ask him something. He said, I have a sheep, some herd of sheep. And I had a young girl slave that looked after them, take him out, they would graze, bring him back. And one time the wolf came and ate one of these sheep. So when she came back missing one of them, I was mad from her, so I slapped her. What should I do? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, bring her. Now what is the expiation for abusing the slaves? Free them. Yeah, they're not allowed to abuse them. They're supposed to be servants with dignity. So when he slapped her, it's not her fault that the sheep, she cannot defend a wolf. She's lucky he didn't eat her, he picked a sheep. So he said, bring her. So he asked her, Ayn Allah, where's Allah? She pointed up. He said, who am I? She said, you are the messenger of Allah. He said, she's a believer. Free her. So he, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he asked her, she pointed up. So if somebody say, Ayn Allah, Allah, up, that's it. It's in. Doesn't mean that there is a space, a certain wall, room called up, and Allah is limited in that area. But Allah is beyond all His creatures. He's above them all. That's all what we need to know. So, Aqidat Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Once this hadith, even one Sahabi, one Tabi'i, student of him, as long as they're trustworthy, everybody in a chain of narration, we accept it. Whether it's matter in aqidah, in this faith, matters of ibadah, halal and haram, matters of dealing, and so on. So we hold to it. The text comes first than anybody's opinion. والعمل بما ورد عن الصحابة في قضايا العقيدة والدين وغيرهما والسير على نهجهم وسننهم لأنهم أعرف بالحق من غيرهم. And then, as I said, whatever the Sahaba have accepted as principles of faith, principles of this religion, we accept it because they are the closest to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They had a better understanding than anybody else. والوقوف عند مفاهيم النصوص وفهم دلالتها وعدم الخوض فيما لا مجال للعقل فيه مع الاستفادة من دلالة العقل في حدوده وعدم الخوض بالتأويلات الباطلة. So when it comes to logic, using your brain, and text, the logic is used to understand the text and applying it, not to reject it, not to judge it. The text is the judge. The logic is to understand it and apply it. And I said before, why you pray 5 times, not 4 times, not 6 times? Why we pray 4 times for Isha, 2 times for Fajr? We shouldn't rationalize it. It's a worship, it's obedience to Allah. That's what Allah wants us to do. Why is the zakat 2.5%? Not 2%, not 5%, not 20%. It's obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the way He wants us to do. Why the woman has to obey her husband, the husband doesn't have to obey a woman. This is Allah and the way He wanted it to be. And so on. So everything, it matters as long as there's a text. The logic is used to understand it and apply it rather than rejecting it. So you have some feminists say, no, we should be equal. A man and a woman should have exactly the same. They have the same thing. There are certain rights for the woman, certain rights for the man, and then there are certain duties for the woman, certain duties for man. When an enemy comes, a woman is not asked to go and put her life on the line and fight and die. A man is asked to do that. When need to provide, the man is responsible providing for his wife and kids. Even if his wife is rich, she has money, she's not responsible spending her kids. He's the one who is responsible for that. and so on. So there's certain duties and responsibilities that Allah has assigned. So nobody should come and make different logic and say, oh, this is fair, this is unfair. ومن مبادئ أهل السنة والجماعة الإعراض عن البدع وعن أهلها فلا يجالسوهم ولا يسمع كلامهم ولا شبههم بل يحذر منهم أشد تحذير خصوصا من عرف منهم بعناده واتباع الهوى. And then one of the principles, anybody, people of deviation, these sects that stay away from Islam, they stay away from them. They don't argue with them, they don't sit with them, they don't listen to their ideas. Certain ulama, they can refute it. General, most people, we shouldn't be indulged. You see somebody, Shi'i, trying to convince you that the Sahaba were all kafara, and that Ali should have been ruling, that Abu Huraira's hadith should be rejected, Aisha hadith be rejected, and Ibn Umar and Ibn Amr ibn al-As, and so on, all of them be rejected. And then, so what we follow? We follow our ulama of Ahlul Bayt. Okay, where is the books? They write you books. Who narrated it? They bring you names, nobody know it, and they create a new religion. You don't listen to them. You know, that's all fabrication. Should somebody stand up and show their fabrication? Yes, there are people who specialize. They know how to understand it and refute it. It's the same thing when you are making da'wah to non-Muslim. Somebody who's generally raised as a Christian or a Jew, who wants to know the truth. You tell them the truth. You have somebody who studied it, made it their life. You need somebody to specialize in it. You're going to start throwing doubts on you. You say, oh, in the Quran, talking about that there's more than one God, talking about Isa that he's not dead, he's still alive, that means he's son of God, and so on. I remember once I was talking to a Christian, I told him, we as Muslims, we believe that Jesus wasn't killed. Allah raised him to the heaven, and he will come back. See, this is a proof that he's a son of God. He haven't done it to any creature other than him. So, no, Allah does whatever he wants. Just because he did that to him doesn't mean he's the son of God. Allah is nowhere saying he's my son. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose him for that purpose. Allah chose Musa to speak with him directly. Musa heard the voice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without an intermediary. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he get the inspiration through the wahi, through Jibreel. The only time he spoke to Allah when through al-Mi'raj, when he went to the heaven and spoke to him, but not commonly as Musa happened to him when he went to Sinai and listened to Allah. And then when Allah spoke to him near that bush that was flaming, Allah did not make himself a flaming bush. Remember, I was seeing somebody say, oh, Allah can choose the shape of any creature. He chose the shape of a burning bush time of Musa, and he chose the shape of a human being at time of Isa, of Jesus. So he can choose the shape of any creature that he wants. So no, Allah revealed his teaching to Musa near the flaming bush, but it wasn't Allah. The bush wasn't there. Isa revealed the words of Allah, but Isa is not Allah. It's not the creator. He's created. Anything that has a beginning, has an end, is created. The creator has no beginning, no end. When Allah created Adam, there was no Isa, there was no Jesus. When the flood came to Noah, there was no Jesus. When Musa was and his people was suffering from Pharaoh and they had all the miracles, there was no Jesus. Allah created Isa. At the time he was created. He gave him the miracle of speaking as a baby. I was surprised that this is not part of the miracles that Christians believe in. They don't know that Isa spoke as a baby. I haven't seen it anywhere. I've seen somebody trying to compare the belief of Muslims and Christians about Isa. One of them said, Muslims believe that Isa spoke as a baby. When Maryam, she had Isa, and she bring him to her people, and they all were shocked. Where that baby come from? Your father was a decent person, your mother was not a whore. How would you come have a children? Right away they thought that she had an affair with someone. And she pointed to him, and he spoke. قال إني عبد الله. I'm a worshiper of Allah. He sent revelation to me. He made me a prophet. He was a baby. that miracle is not mentioned anywhere in the Gospels. So our proof is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can choose his revelation any way he is, but he does not make himself as a creature. So that's the belief of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Anybody with deviation, you stay away with them, you don't argue with them. ومن مبادئهم لزوم جماعة المسلمين ونبذ التفرقة والتحذير منهم. And then the main thing that makes them Ahlul Jama'ah, that they stay with the Jama'ah, the group of Muslims. We consider ourselves all Muslims. You go to any masjid anywhere in the world, when it's time for Salah, you go in. Or you don't ask, well, this is Hanafi or Shafi'i or Maliki, these are Pakistani, these are Syrians, Egyptians, or these Bosnians, these are African Americans, these from this. You don't ask, we're one group. Now, if you are a Christian, you ask, oh, this is Catholic, this is Southern Baptist, this is Presbyterian, this is Methodist, this is whatever. They have all these sects. I worship here, I don't worship there. This is Orthodox. Islam is one. The only group that created their own way, you see the Shia. They don't have even masjid, what they call it Husayniyya. Because in their belief that Jum'ah and Jama'ah and Jihad and everything should not happen until the Imam of the time should be alive and running. And since Imam number 11 died with no children, they created a child for him. They call him Al-Mahdi. And he's still hidden in a secret dungeon in Samarra in Iraq. And they're waiting for him to come back. So until he comes back, there is no Salah and Jama'ah, there's no Jum'ah, nothing. Until somebody came with a bid'ah for them. That's Khomeini. He said, في غياب الإمام الولي الفقيه يقوم مقام الإمام. So when the Imam is not there, the prominent faqih can become an appointed Imam, have all the duties of Imam. So they started building masjid, they started having their Jama'ah and so on. But still they prefer calling their masajid Husayniyya rather than masjid, to remember Al-Hussein. And Al-Hussein has nothing to do with them. فإذا استدلالهم من القرآن الكريم، ذكرنا الآيات في اتباع القرآن واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, hold tight to the rope of Allah and don't split into separate groups. The rope of Allah, this is the revelation. وقوله تعالى وأن هذا صراطي مستقيما فاتبعوه ولا تتبعوا السبل فتفرق بكم عن سبيله. This is my straight path, follow it, don't follow other paths, it will lead you astray from this path. And so on. A lot of ayat about following the Quran. استدلالهم من السنة قال صلى الله عليه وسلم مثل المنافق الذي لا يقرأ القرآن كمثل الحنظلة ليس لها ريح وطعمها مر. People should follow the Quran. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave an example of people who don't read Quran. It becomes like a bitter tasting plant that has no good in it. You don't smell anything good in it. If you taste it, it's bitter. وفي حديث عمر بن الخطاب عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إن الله يرفع بهذا الكتاب أقواما ويضع به آخرين. That in this hadith says that Allah will raise the status of people because of this book and will lower the status of others because of this book. That means those who follow the orders of Allah, His book and revelation, the status will be high in this life and the hereafter. Those who oppose them will be lower in this life and hereafter. وفي حديث ابن عباس إن الذي ليس في جوفه شيء من القرآن كالبيت الخرب. And this hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam give an example, somebody that has no Quran inside him as a house that's empty, ruins. It's nothing. And so on. A lot of ahadith to the meaning of about following the Quran. And following the Sunnah, also a lot of ahadith. One of it, عن عبد الله بن عمرو قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من رغب عن سنتي فليس مني. Whoever turns away from my sunnah, from my way, is not part of me. It doesn't belong to me. وعن أبي موسى رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إن مثلي ومثل ما بعثني به أي ما بعثني الله به مثل رجل أتى قومه فقال إني رأيت جيشا بعيني وإني النذير العريان فالنجاه فأطاعه طائفة من قومي فأدلجوا وانطلقوا على مهلهم فنجوا وكذبت طائفة منهم فأصبحوا على مكانتهم فصبحهم الجيش واستباحهم فذلك مثلي ومثل من أطاعني واتبع ما جئت به ومثل من عصاني وكذب ما جئت به من الحق. In this hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he gave an example of real life example with people in the desert at that time. So they have outlookers looking for enemies. So if somebody's seen an enemy coming, he will stand in the closest mountain, they'll see him, and to attract attention, they take off their clothes, they start waving with them and yelling and screaming. So people know this is serious. Yeah, so he will not take off his clothes for a joke. Say, I am that naked person telling you the army is coming to attack you. So some of his people believed him. So they packed and left middle of the night, saved themselves. Some say, no, I'm not going to believe that person. Next day, that enemy army attacked them, killed them, and destroyed them. So whoever follow me, I'll be like those who believed that person who's warning them. And those who don't believe the truth and follow will be destroyed. He's giving us the truth. I mean, imagine now, you know somebody you trust really, really good, have a near-death experience. And he tells you, when I came, I've seen the angels, they told me this, they told me that, and they told me do this and that, and come back and say, you would listen to him if you know he's a good person. I mean, if he's crazy, that's something different. But if you know he's a sound person, a wise person, don't lie, and tells you about that experience, just one-time experience, you pay attention to him. How about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? He's getting revelation day and night. He had that for 23 years. He was taken in this magnificent journey one night from Mecca to Jerusalem, and the same night from Jerusalem to heavens. Seen the angels, he's seen the prophets, he got the revelation, come to you. He's every day again the revelation. He's telling you about things happening, things that happened before, things that will happen later, what faith you need to do, what is right, what is wrong, and so on. Why wouldn't you pay attention? Who else has a better experience than that? I mean, I'm really amazed, like the people who follow the Scientology. He's a person who invented Scientology. His business was a sci-fi writer. He write fiction about scientific things. And then he created religion and people followed him at that. It's like, how crazy that will be. So I say, I'm a liar. I'm gonna tell a lie and I want you to follow it. And say, okay, we'll do that. Inshallah, next time we'll be reading about the saying about holding truth to the Sunnah and avoiding Bid'ah. Because this is the hallmark of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, that you do not innovate in the religion. You follow the teaching of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam with the understanding of the Sahaba. And that's what makes us one group. One of the best proof that the Sunnah is the right way, that the people who deviate from the Sunnah are not one group. Truth is one, falsehood is multiple. If everybody have the same logic and everybody agreed on a certain thing, you'll find anybody deviated from the main path will have only one path. Well, you see, I'm going to find in different groups, different paths.
Nur and Zulumat.
Yes. يخرجهم من الظلمات إلى النور. That there is only one light, the multiple types of darkness. That light comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allahu nuru samawati wal ard. That Allah is the nur, the light of heavens and earth. Allah gives that nur to whoever He wishes. In Surah An-Nur, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describing the believers. كَمِشْكَاتٍ فِيهَا مِصْبَاحٌ الْمِصْبَاحُ فِي زُجَاجَةٍ. He describing the believers as the way they have to use the oil lamp. So we have the oil lamp, it has a glass on top of it, and it's put in a window, usually somewhere in a wall, half window. It doesn't show the other one. The mishkah is where they put that lamp. The lamp has two parts, the glass part and the oil part. And the oil part in that ayah is lit by a blessed tree, an olive tree that describes it's not Eastern, it's not Western, that will light up without even any light touching it. So the ulama is saying that this is the example of a believer, that the believer wants the truth. The believer by himself is like that lamp with the glass. It's good, it's shining, it has value in it, but it doesn't shine until it gets that nur from Allah, that knowledge, that inspiration that comes from Allah, that's fueled by the revelation, the Quran and the Sunnah. So it comes to something of value, of importance, and make it beneficial. More, a lamp that has no oil in it and there's no light to it, it's nice, it's good, but this does not have the full potential. It's not as good as it doesn't light. So this is the status of a human being. الناس معادن خيارهم في الجاهلية خيارهم في الإسلام إذا فقهوا أو فقهوا. The Sahaba once asked, who are the most generous person, most noble person? So if you want a person, Yusuf, Joseph. Yusuf, his father was Yaqub, Jacob. His father was Ishaq, Isaac. His father was Abraham. So 3-4 generations of prophets and good people. You never have anybody with such a lineage. Say, no, this is not what we're asking about. You say, asking about good people and bad people. Say, yes. Say, people are material, they're treasures. The best among them in Jahiliyyah, before Islam, they become the best people in Islam once they have the understanding, the knowledge. So, and that's where a good person is a good person, but doesn't get his full potential until he's get the iman, the faith, and the knowledge of this religion and practicing it. That's why you find some people who are Muslim, they're better than non-Muslim, but they might be a little bit mean, a little bit angry, not very generous, and so on. They still have faith, they're still good, better than a non-believer, but a true good person will always be good. Once, the more they understand, the more they practice their religion, the more they shine. They get it from this Nurullah. This is what we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us from His nur, from the understanding, the acceptance, the practice. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us forgiveness and protect us and protect our kids. Anyone has any question?
Sure.
Yeah.
Kind of a random question.
Yeah.
Not related to there's a famous story many of us have heard of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu taking care of the old blind lady.
Mm-hmm.
And recently I've always heard the story for many times. I never doubted it. But just recently I read into an article that was saying this is a very more beautiful story. Any thoughts on that?
So, in general, when you're talking about stories, the ulama have differentiated between two kinds of stories. The stories that has an implication on practice. So they really scrutinize these ones, made sure that the chain of narration is authentic. And then there's those what they call raqa'iq. Raqa'iq, things that soften your heart. It doesn't add anything halal or haram, make anything like this. So these stories are just told as stories. So is it permissible in Islam that somebody will look after an old blind lady? Yes, it is encouraged to do. Would Abu Bakr do something like this? Probably he would. Did he do something like this? Allahu A'lam. We don't know. But they mention it. So there's no harm in mentioning it, but you cannot assign it. It's like but there's some stories are kind of dangerous. It's like the story when Umar radiallahu anhu, he wanted to assign the dowry for the woman, make it a prescribed amount. Because people start having wealth, So instead of having small amount of money, just start putting a lot of wealth to give as a gift for women as a dowry. So he wanted to limit it. And then that one woman stood up for him and said, Allah in his book said, وَآتَيْتُمْ إِحْدَاهُنَّ قِنْطَارًا, that you might give one of them a large scale, a big heap of money, that you should give it back to her and something like this. You say, if Allah said قنطار, who are you to that? Say, أصابت امرأة وأخطأ عمر. Say a woman was right and Umar was wrong. Now the whole story is fabricated. It's nothing to do there. There's a lot of people make it an example of how people should say the truth regardless who it is. Or when they gave bay'ah to Abu Bakr, and they say أطيعوني ما أطعت الله ورسوله, and that one that you should obey me as long as I obey Allah and His Messenger, follow their way. And one of them say, if you go astray, we will straighten you up with our swords. And say, oh, alhamdulillah, that Allah has made in my ummah somebody that will say that to me. Fabricated story. And a lot of people say, oh, you should stand up for the ruler and straighten up with the sword. No, that's not the way of the Sahaba. So that's where, when the story is just a story, doesn't add anything to the practice, people are lenient with it. But if we'll change practice and people will make it as a clue to certain practices that against the text of Islam, then the line should be drawn. The one I really love most about how people will fabricate the hadith and make their own narration. So they tell you the story of Ahmad ibn Hanbal wa Yahya ibn al-Ma'in. So there were two of the prominent scholars of their time in Baghdad in Abbasi time. So once time they were traveling through a little town and they'd seen a man narrating hadith. He said, حدثني أحمد بن حنبل ويحيى بن المعين, and he said a certain hadith about it. And then once he finished, say, I'm Ahmad ibn Hanbal, this is Yahya ibn Ma'in, we never met you, we don't know this hadith, we never told you that hadith. You say, you think the only two people on the face of earth that name Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Yahya ibn Ma'in? I know a lot of people that name. That story is fabricated. This story, talk about the fabric. This story has no chain of narration or somebody mentioned in a book and that's it. The story of when Rasulullah ﷺ came to the dream of one of the rulers of the Ayyubiyin, that there was a conspiracy of the Crusaders at that time. They want to go to Medina, dig up the grave of Rasulullah ﷺ, steal his body and take it home, and then challenge the people, tell them, you fabricated a man named Muhammad, there's no proof, go dig the grave, they find nobody. And then that ruler, I think he was in Syria or Egypt or something like this, every night he see Rasulullah ﷺ bringing these two blonde people, say, save me from these two blonde guys. Multiple times he said that to him. So he went to Hajj, in his way to Medina, he says, I want to greet everybody in Medina. So they start one by one bringing him. He never seen these two people until he said, there's somebody missing. Say, yeah, there are two people who are worshippers. They bought a little house close to a masjid. And all what they do, they pray and go spend all day there. They don't interact with anybody. Say, I want them. Once he saw them, say, they are the ones. Say, look in their home, they found them digging a tunnel going to the grave of Rasulullah ﷺ. So he ordered that they should pour molten lead around the grave of Rasulullah ﷺ, so nobody would ever, so they wouldn't touch the grave, just go around it and dig it. The whole story is fabricated. It was mentioned in one book of history like 100 or 200 years after that ruler. I don't know, I don't think it was Salah ad-Din, maybe Imad ad-Din or Nur ad-Din al-Zinki or something like this. It was mentioned like 100, 200 years later with nobody saying if it happened. Yes, Rasulullah, his grave, there's molten lead around it, but it has nothing to do with that story itself. It was, there was a flood one time that came to Medina and it ran through the Masjid al-Nabawi and through Hujrat Aisha and exposed one of the graves. They've seen a foot or a hand showing, and everybody freaked out. And they went, and the people said this was for Umar. So they covered it, and then they put this molten lead around it, so whatever happens, the graves will not be touched. And some people say because This is one of the karama of Umar being a shaheed, that his body was preserved. It hasn't decayed. I don't know how later on this happened, 50, 100 years or something like this. In the time of Umayyad, this happened. So later on. So that's where these stories be taken with a grain of salt. A lot of the ahadith, of the stories about things Umar used to do and rule and do, a lot of it mentioned in books of history without chains of narration. So we need to be careful about it. As I said, it's a lovely story that how Abu Bakr, he used to go to this woman, visit her, take care of her, and then when he died, there was nobody taking care of her, and Umar al-Khattab asked, who's that man? He said, oh, just a guy that comes every day, cook for me, prepare a meal for me. And then Umar said, you made the job for everybody comes after you very hard. Who's gonna keep up with you? So it could have happened. It's not surprising that Abu Bakr or Umar would do something like this, but we don't know for sure if it happened. And this is the difference between authentic Sunnah and narrations.
There is a story about Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that when he entered Makkah, a lady, she was passing, going away. Then she met Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and he took her burden and asked why I want to get rid of, because there is somebody very dangerous Muhammad has come. Then he took her beyond the border of the city, and finally she gave. Then she says, who are you? He says, I'm the one for whom you are living. If you are the same man, then I need to go back with you.
Yeah, so these are stories that have no chains of narration. People mention it as stories. They're authentic narrations you're going to find in books of hadith. Books of seerah, some of them mention the chain of narration, a lot of them don't. So the seerah is like history books. So some of them are authenticated and some of them you don't know. So anything that's really odd, ulama will doubt it. Say this story, we don't know anybody who's trustworthy who've narrated it. Is the whole story طلع البدر علينا, that when Rasulullah ﷺ he migrated from Mecca to Medina, that the people of Medina went out and they were singing طلع البدر. They say the whole thing is fabricated. من ثنيات الوداع. ثنيات الوداع is north of Medina. And Rasulullah went from south, from Mecca to Medina. ثنيات الوداع, north. So how it come all the way north and they will sing for that. Some say, oh, it's referring when he came back from another battle, Tabuk or something else, when he went north and they sing it. So there's no narration of it, but it's like everybody growing up, going to Islamic school, they know طلع البدر علينا. So that's where I said there is things that are authentic and certain things are stories, but you shouldn't build up any halal and haram on these stories that have no authentic chain of narration. Hope that answered, inshallah.
So it's an unrelated topic as well. So one of these weird new drinks that are out there is called kombucha. So this drink is basically fermented like sugar and tea and some other things with bacteria and yeast. What is that?
Well, Wallah, it's like a step down from pure alcohol. One shouldn't drink it. It's fermented, basically, and there's alcohol in it. Not large amount alcohol, what you see in wine and vodka and so on, but there's alcohol in it. And if somebody drink large enough amount of it, will get drunk. So, yeah, one should not ferment it. Rasulullah ﷺ, he used to soak raisin in water, and you would drink it 2 or 3 days. Once it starts fermenting and you can see it bubbling, you throw it away. So anytime fermentation starts, you shouldn't touch it. Well, yeah, it's like people ask about alcohol-free beer. It's, I don't know, it's like rotten barley and you take the alcohol out of it. Why would you do that? It's a step for people getting used to the taste of beer, and then later on can drink alcohol. I don't know if everybody, maybe some who are turning to Islam, they tasted beer. It is not a lovely taste. It's an acquired taste because given the buzz. So they learn to love it. It's not something naturally that people would enjoy. So if somebody started doing alcohol-free beer, it will naturally get used to that taste. And later on, somebody offering regular beer, you would drink it. But for a regular Muslim who never tasted beer, you give him a beer, taste it, and says it tastes like piss. They will not come near it. But doing the alcohol-free beer, that will be a way to it. It might be useful for a non-Muslim or an alcoholic who's trying to get off, so that you wean down. But really, the way the Sahaba did it when the prohibition of alcohol came, they just abstained from it. And if you look at AA meetings, about any kind of meetings for addict people, first thing, they abstain totally from the substance they're addicted to. You cannot do it halfway, slow down, instead of drinking 4 beers a day, drink 2 beers a day, then 1 beer. No, that's it. Cut it off. You can't do that. You cannot do it half measure. So, nothing like that. Allahu Akbar. Subhanakallah wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta